Hi Grammar School, this is Uboat, and today we have a pre-record session of a senior member of Grammar School, CFTheNatural, otherwise known as Charles. And I don't know if most of you have noticed that those of you who do post your blogs, I do follow everyone's blog. And when I was following CFTheNatural, I noticed that he was dabbling in 5 PLO. And I asked him to send me maybe one hour session of his pre-record session of 5 PLO. And we'll go over his 2 tables of 5 PLO, and we'll start it right now. And he plays at Bovada. And as you know, at Bovada, they don't allow, well, all the players are anonymous, which I think is really great when you're especially when you're starting out, because you're always trying to base your plays on leads. How about the microstakes, especially at 5 PLO? Everyone will have very similar kind of, whoops, let's look at that. On table number 1, he had trips for the kings, and he didn't bet out on that river. It shows how passive these players are, and even if they think they have the nuts, they're kind of afraid to bet out. And just take note of that. So he's very passive, and even if he has the nuts in the river, or basically almost the nuts, he's not going to bet out. They'll avoid any bet fold type of plays. As we continued earlier, the tables are anonymous, which I think is great for any new players, because you are forced to make reads on your opponents. And ace, jack, 6, 8, we're going to fold that from middle position. But we are fortunate that CFTheNatural has a HUD. And the HUD shows how passive these players are. It's like very similar to the stats at any other sites. I mean, I play at PokerStars, and these, anything like 50 or 80 VPIP to 0 to 10 PFR is very similar to, we have 2 pairs on table number 2. And as you know, as you can see, another very similar kind of play with these passive players are, even if once they have 2 pairs, they can't fold it because they are viewing it like no limit. And in no limit, 2 pairs is quite strong. However, in PLO, 2 pairs is very mediocre. It's almost junky at best. We're playing very passively here. And 5, 10, 4, 9, that's an easy fold. And 5, 9, 4, 9 at the big blind, if anyone raises, it's a fold. It's not a very good card. And if you do flop a draw, it's not going to be flush draw to the nuts. We're not going to draw any straight to the nuts. And also we're not going to get any sets to the nuts. So top set, we'll probably have middle set or bottom set. So that's a clear fold at the big blind. And with these loose passive players, I think CFTheNatural, he's folding very well. He's folding all his junky hands. So I think any hand that he will be opening will be very strong, and it'll be well ahead of anyone else's range. So if that was him, I know you guys are just starting out at 5 PLO. It would be okay to just loosen up a little bit. You can open up hands like any suited ace with like 5, 6, 7, or 5, 6, 7 and up, and any suited kings that has well connected cycle like king, king, 7, 8, king, king, 9, 10. And like this hand at table number 1, 6, 8, queen, king, I think this is well ahead of anyone else's range, but we are at the big blind. If you're at the button, it's definitely a call against these players, but at the big blind, probably better to just fold out, because in PLO, even if you're playing against these loose donkeys, we do want to play in position against them. Being out of position weakens our hand so much, so it's better to just fold that kind of hand, and he does, which is great. And on table number 2, they And anyone with 5 is a better kicker. Take that down. I really doubt anyone has a full house because no one's really thinking of that. And when you do play these micro-states of 10 PLO and below, you only want to, bet off thinly on the river if you have seen their hands previously. So if you have like the 3rd nuts or the 4th nuts, I would just go betting around the river for any value. Okay, I'm not processing right now. On table number 1, we have 10, 9, Jack, 3 in the small blind. Normally, if these were just regular players with regular stats, so regular stats would be, strong stats would be anything like where the VPIP is maybe, say, 35 to 20, and the PFR from anywhere from like 25 to 15. If we're playing against strong players, this is an easy fold at the small blind because we are out of position. But against these type of players, I don't mind calling any open raises or even opening up because we can hit the flop very hard. And although we have a dangler of 3, against these loose passive players, even playing these 3 cards will be very strong. It plays very strong. Let's just continue like CFTheNatural. Good. And table number 2, 8, 7, King 7 is an easy fold at the small blind. And we won't even call you even if you get pot odds if everyone else comes in. However, I'm going to pause this again. The button here 3 bets the under the gun. And when he 3 bets and we're out of position, then that would be an automatic fold. However, if that hand was 10, 9, Jack, 8, that's definitely a call against a 3 bet. Because at these stakes, when anyone 3 bets, I would always put them on ace, ace, XX, being ace, whether junky or not. And a strong rundown such as 10, 9, Jack, 8 will play very well against any aces post flop because we will hit flop hard with like say 2 pairs or any straight draw. Whereas aces, they're trying to hit another ace for top set. I mean, if they have anything that's suited, they do have potential to hit the nut flush, but this hand plays much better than any of these aces on post-flop. But pre-flop, I mean, any aces will be well ahead of us, at the most maybe 60 to 40. But post-flop, the equity will change significantly, where we can be coin flipping on the flop or be ahead of any aces. So we'll continue on. So that's an easy fold when we get 3 bet. And they fold on table number 2. Queen, 5, 3, 4. That's an easy fold even at the button. I mean, we could call you, but say we got a flush draw or straight draw or a mate straight. We have to be aware of our reverse implied odds of 3, 4, 5. It's not a very good card to open with. So we have table number 2. We have 2 pair. So another interesting thing is, I mean, there's a mate flush, and this guy kept calling with 6-8 with 2 pairs. So, I mean, he did have a gut or 2, but it just shows the different pairs that we have at these limits. And 2, Jack, Jack, 5. If it's heads up against under the gun, I'll definitely call and try to hit. What is it? Oh no, he's just short stack. No, if he doesn't call, if the cutoff doesn't call the short stacker's open raise, I'll probably jam and try to get the rest of his stack. There's only 26 left on the stack. Whereas if he calls, I would fold because if we do call, we're trying to hit a jack, nothing else. We have nothing to the nuts other than trying to hit top set. So that's an easy fold as well. pre-flop. And hopefully cutoff doesn't, hopefully the cutoff folds, but he calls the open raise, so that's an easy fold at the button. Table number 1, we have 9-6 Jack 9 at the cutoff. We'll hit the flop fairly well, and against a limp, I wouldn't mind considering like calling that limp, but folding it's just as good as well, because the 9-9 is not very good, because the only thing 9-9 is going to give you is maybe a potential for maybe a straight draw or maybe the middle set. The middle set is not very good in PLO, and we do hit the middle set on a very wet board. And on a board like that against these loose passive, again, I would definitely bet out if, well, maybe call that flop bet. And we would have quads. And table number 1. Kind of interesting hand. We are middle position, and this under the gun limps, and we have ace 10-6 queen suited to the queen. I guess there's an option to 3-bet or raise this limper, isolate the limper, but we are out of position with these players still yet to act. So I'll definitely fold, but if you're in the button with a player like that, like limping and pre-flop, I would definitely raise, isolate to play hits up against that player. But since we're in middle position, we're out of position with player 6-1, with player 6 and 1, and also the small blind, big blind yet to call. It's an easy fold in middle position. So when you're playing these hands, right, always be aware of the type of players that you have to the left and right of you. And depending on the type of hand you have, you always have to consider, what options you have. And so you also want to play the players, and you just don't want to play your cards all the time. And I hate to make generalization about players, but at these stakes, especially 2 and 5 PLO, they're loose passive. And even if they have the nuts sometimes, I've seen some guys with quads just checking down 3 streets. You just want to bet for value until they re-raise you. And when they do re-raise you, you want to make a fold. And on the river, on a very dry board, if you have some like 2 pair, I would definitely check back and to get a cheap showdown, especially when there's a mate straight or a mate flush on the board. Because these guys, they're going to call you down with the non-nut, say like the 5th nut flush. And you don't want to value time yourself in those type of hands. And on tip number 1, 17-6 deuce, easy fold from under the gun, a very weak, gappy hand. And this player seems to raise 3x, which is good, he's not limping. So maybe not as loose passive as these other players at the table. And it's a dry flop. I'll definitely, actually, that's multi-way. So when it's multi-way, even at these stakes, everyone's going to play face up. And table number 2, we have a really interesting hand here. We are dealt 10-9, 6-7 with a gap in the middle. And we have this player number 3 who just posted, and we don't have any stats on this board. And as we know, table number 2, very loose passive, 75-0, 75-38, 71-29, and 38-0. They're all very loose passive, or this player very tight passive players. And this hand is a very strong hand. Even though we have the gap in the middle, it's going to be ahead of most of these players' range. So what I would do from under the gun is I would open full pot and try to take this pot down pre-flop, but I really doubt it because, as you can see, we have very loose passive players who are going to call anything. But this is a hand that's going to hit the flop pot. It can hit first 2 pairs, or any flush draw, or any flush draw, or a straight draw, and it's going to hit the flop so hard. So I would definitely open full pot on this under the gun, especially with this player, short stacker, hosting at cutoff. So let's see how CFTheNatural plays this. I think it's debating whether to open or not, and rightly so, because it is a strong hand. And he folded. I think that's definitely a hand that you should have raised against these loose passive players, because that is a very strong hand. As long as we don't have a gap at the top, even though this player opens ISO raises from the button, he's probably ISO raising with probably aces, and this hand's still going to play quite well against his hand. Will flop a lot better than he does. And players at these stakes, when they raise, they're going to raise with any junky aces. So, all he's trying to do is hit ace on the flop, whereas you can hit the flop so hard here. Wow. And table number 1, we have ace, queen, 10, 8. I think this is a hand that is going to play quite well against these loose passive donkeys. Just looking at a past hand. Flush. Okay, so ace, queen, 10, 8. We do hit the flop with bottom 2 pair. And I think we have notes from CFTheNatural on this hand. Oops. So he says, table number 1, first hand I play, we're dealt ace, queen, 10, 8 in the big blind. There's 2 limpers. I check. You see the flop. And the flop is 10, jack, 8, monotone. I flop 2 pair. Yes, you do have 2 pair, but it's bottom 2 pair, not the top 2 pair. We have the third nut flush draw. No, we don't. We just have 1 queen of spades. You need 2 spades to hit any kind of flush draw, and you don't have anything here. Having 1 queen of spades gives you nothing. So I think you're viewing this as a no limit hand. And remember, in pot limit Omaha, you need 2 hands to hit that flush. So if you had queen or deuce of spades, yes, you do. You would have the second nut flush, made flush, not a flush draw. And you have a gut shot straight. But the thing about the gut shot straight draw is, if you do hit a 9, I'll discount it because there's a made flush out there, and whoever has any, even let's say 5 deuce of spades, will be free rolling against your made straight. And it says, I lead pot for value with my 2 pair and a big draw. Well, it's not a big draw, and to charge anyone drawing to a better flush. So I do like that. I would actually, let's kind of go over this hand thoroughly, okay? So we have ace, queen, 10, 8 on the big blind. It's a marginal hand, but a good type of hand that will hit the flop hard, as you can see. And we do hit bottom 2 pair on a wet board, but this is a limp pot. So the other players may have like a sucker draw or the non-nut flush draw. And always on a monochrome board such as this, and against loose passive little fold type of player, I always prefer to bet to take this flop down, which CFTheNatural also stated. And we do have 6 outs for the boat, but any of our outs to a straight draw we have to discount because there is a made flush out on this flop. So 2 pair, yes you do. Third nut flush draw, no you don't, because you don't have anything there. You need 2 spades to have any draws. And on this one, if you did have 2 spades, you have the third nut flush draw. Third nut made flush, which is true, but it's not the nutted flush. And your gutter, I wouldn't even consider it as a draw because it's a made flush. And when you do make your straight, you're driving dead. So bottom 2 pair, you're not betting for value on this hand. You're betting to take the pot down. So it's a bet to bluff. It's not a bet for value. And there's a made flush, so any of your outs to the flush, straight draw are dead. Therefore, this is not a big hand, but a hand that versus loose passive donkeys, you've got to take you've got to bet to take this pot down or fold to any re-raise and give up on the turn if called. Even if you make your straight, the donkeys will not fold their non-nutted flush, so they will get a free roll if you continue to value count yourself. And let's see how you make a bet on the flop. Table number 2, 5, 6, 10, 10. I would fold that. Not a position. Okay, so you bet close to pot, which is good. And always bet close to pot at the beginning, especially on a board wet as this one, and anything smaller you will get called and you take it down. And for micro stakes players, they see any small bet, any bet that's close to pot as potting it as the nuts, and they give too much credit for betting the flop and they will fold up for bet here. What's that? Table number 1. Take it down. And on table number 1, 7, ace, 4, 5, that's an easy fold from small blind. Table number 1, we actually have an interesting hand. We have 9, 6, ace, 8 suited to the ace. If everyone limps, I would definitely call this from the small blind. We have a potential to hit the nut flush, and also we have a chance to hit a straight draw. Here we have the limper who ISO raises, kind of odd size here, and this guy 3 bets. And when he 3 bets, we know that at these stakes he probably has any aces, and he's a short stacker. And since we hold the ace ourselves, it's an easy fold. Whereas if he called, I know we are out of position, I wouldn't mind calling the ISO raise here, and even if he called too. Because we do have the potential to hit the nut flush and decent chance to hit some kind of straight or straight draw. But when he re-raises, and I guess the short stacker, we're going to fold into small blind. Table number 1 with 3 deuce jack 6 on the button, we will fold. Remember, we don't want to try to steal the blinds at Portland, Omaha, micro stakes, because they're going to call you all the time. 3, 4, 6, 10 at the button. Ooh. Definitely good fold. We could hit the nuts right there. Although we do hit the nuts, we do have an outs for a better straight. Yeah, that would have been nice. Had to play in position. Yeah, and we'll take it down on that. So, you know what, let's go back to this hand. I mean, it was a raised pot, but we're playing against very passive players, and I think on the button, we do have suited to the 10s, and that's kind of connected. On the button, it's okay to fold, and it's okay to call that too. Because when you play the button, you do have position, and we would hit that hard. And the 6 gives us, additional outs, so, but, nothing wrong with calling there. I mean, nothing wrong with folding there. And just see what these players have. Yeah, you would have had them, so for sure. Table number 1, they go straight on 2. Yeah, so this player on a straight made board, he bets out with basically the low set. And the bottom set on Parliament Omaha is just pure junk. You're not going to get anything. Even if you hit the boat, someone else with higher set will get the higher boat. So that shows how bad these players are. And if you had bet out, you would have probably, and if you had bet out and you were involved in hand, you would have stacked him for sure. And on table number 1, what is that hand? So, oh, aces. Yeah, I get to take note of these hands. So bets out with the bottom side on a mid straight board. Now notice that you're not topping your stack here. I guess you don't have auto top at Bovada. That's what I'm saying, because I know CFTheNatural, he's a solid player at the micros, and I know he would top it up all the time. And yeah, I know you're looking back at these hands. I would definitely take note of it if you can, even if the notes are not saved. It's kind of saves a lot of work by taking notes of these guys. I think that's what Spenda did on his videos playing at Bovada, and I would always do that. Just take notes so that you don't have to go back and forth to see what they did on the previous hand. But as you can see, they're very loose passive, and any sign of aggression they probably have like a set, sometimes mate straight or sucker straight. So if you have the nuts, they're just re-raising to the stop. And as you can see at these microstakes at polynomial, you always have these post-flop multi-way, and everyone will play face up. So you kind of know what their hands are, even if they do have 4 hold cards. And here you have aces. Awesome. You raise full pot. And hopefully you get some colors here. Blue calls. It's junky aces because it's single suited and the sidecars are not very well connected, but you do have a chance of getting top set or top 2 pair. And unfortunately, they fold, and we can't see any action on that hand. And deuce 5, queen 10, that's an easy fold from the big blind. And we'll definitely fold that hand, especially when he raises. And again, on table number 2, they have a flop where they see it 4 ways, and they're going to play it straight up, face up, sorry. It's a raised pot, and no one bet that I run that flop. 10 cents on a 57-cent flop. That's a very weak bet. It's trying to probably protect against. It's not really protection. I have no idea what that means. Usually it's nothing. They have some connected card, but they're just afraid to get stacked. Awesome. On table number 1, we have ace, deuce, ace, 6 on the small blind, which kind of sucks me on the small blind. But against these players, I think it's best to just call if you get multi-way. If you're heads up, I would definitely raise. Say, for example, if he didn't limp in, if the button limped in, I would definitely raise and try to see the pot heads up. And let's see what CFTheNatural stated on this hand. It says, I get ace, deuce, ace, 6 single suited in the small blind. I flat call, I guess. I flat call about an isolation raise, which is good. I don't feel this hand is strong enough to 3-bet out of position, and will just broke the pot. True. But the button is 64-7, and could easily be isolating with worse, so I want to see the flop with it. The flop goes 5 ways. My hand doesn't improve, and I fold the turn when the board pairs. Well, I think it's good reasoning, and I can't see any fault in that. However, let's go back to this hand. We'll play it after I go over this one. If player number 1 had raised 3x, well, you know what, let's play up to the flop. I'll go over this. So we get another limper, and then he raises, and he calls right here. Okay, so let's go over this hand. If any of these, player number 1 or table number 2, had raised 2x or 3x, and if the button had 3-bet them, it would have been the perfect opportunity to 4-bet and get our stacks in, because we would have gotten at least 35 to 40% of our stacks in pre-flop, and we can play post-flop up perfectly by just shoving it on a plus-size bet. However, as played, we have these two limpers, and he iso-raised, and if we had re-raised him, we would be getting in less than 30% pre-flop, and that's going to play really difficult out of position. So as played, I think calling was probably the best play. And let's see the pre-flop. Tip number 2, you have Jack, Jack, 4, 4 at under the 10. That's a fold. It's not suited. There's nothing suited there. I mean, having Jack's not that great. Multi-way. Now, you can bet out or not, but I think someone has an 8. I'll definitely check back. Table number 2 had a set, but no, it's still a good fold. Because that's such a wet board in the one multi-way. Someone could have had ace queen or maybe top set of kings, because these players do play passively. Even if they have top set, they will just call or check back. Now that player, this number 6, bets 1/3. We're going to fold that. Yeah, especially when he calls 2, we're going to fold that hand. I just have a feeling that maybe this player probably has aces to the hearts. He was a pre-flop raiser, and I think he will raise with any ace XX. He probably had. Oh no, we do have ace to the hearts here. Jeez. Maybe kings to the hearts. Not too sure. Someone types up. And 5-8-3 queen. We will fold that on the button. Not worth any raise. Not worth calling with a hand like that. Oh, I didn't show his cards. That's good. 7 deuce king queen. We'll fold that from the big blind. And no, not too many interesting spots here. And these players are playing very fiddle-fold post-flop. So, I mean, geez, I think I should consider depositing some money at Bovada, as long as I don't play against Spenda. Yeah, because they're very loose passive here. I think just as passive as PokerStars. And PokerStars, even up to 25 PLO, you'll get these kind of tables very easily to get these kind of tables at 25 PLO and at 10 PLO. And I think if CFTheNatural keeps playing his, gets used to playing these strong starting hands at Palomar, he'll definitely be a winner at these stakes. And just learn to read the balls a bit better. What was that? Pizzas, right? Let us set. So that's any calls. Yeah, I'm gonna set. And they're betting out on these made straights. So if you have the nuts, you gotta bet out and re-raise them on the river. 8-5 king 3, definitely a fold. I never had to cut off. Yeah, that's such a wet board, and he just bet out with top 2 pairs. So it shows the type of donkey bets that they do at these stakes. And when you do have the nuts, I mean, you're not going to fold against these pairs. But we do have to be careful when we have like the third nut straight or third nut flush draw. Okay, I'm going to pause this video right here. We have an ace, queen, 9, king. It kind of sucks that we have 3 spades, but we still have a hand that's suited to the ace. And we also have a gap with a jack and 10. But we have ace, king, queen, which can flop top 2 pair, a straight draw really well, and the nut flush draw. So if this under the gun raises, open raises, we're definitely going to call. And if he limps, we're going to definitely ISO raise, and hopefully we get these guys, other players, to call us. However, if any of these players re-raises us full pot, we're going to fold, because anyone who re-raises or 3-bets at these 5 PLO stakes, they're only raising with aces XX. And since we have an ace, that's going to severely cripple our hand, and we have to be forced to fold that pre-flop. So let's see what happens here. On table number 2, there's a mate straight. Interesting hand. This is awesome. So he open raises full pot, which is really good at early position, and we get a caller at the button. And we get a caller at the big blind. And we flop top and bottom 2 pair. So there's a mate straight out there. There's a rainbow flop. And you know what? You can go both ways. I'll definitely, if the big blind checks back, and I know we still have this player who's on the button who has position on us, I'll definitely bet close to pot to take this flop down. But if any of these 2 players calls our flop bet, I'll check the turn if we don't improve on that turn. Okay. Let's see what happens. So, awesome. So he does bet close to pot at 40 cents, which is good. And you don't want to bet anything. You don't want to make a weak bet out here, because you're going to get called. So it's a big blind. I mean, the button bets. And let's see what the big blind does. The big blind calls. Ooh. And we don't like that turn. We don't like that turn because any 6-8 gets there. We also have a mate straight with queen jack. And this gives a potential flush draw. And you only have the 2 pair with king and 9. And on this turn, I would give up and check back. Because I mean, by betting, you're giving more chips to any mate straight, because we have 2 mate straights. Any 6-8 or queen jack has a mate straight. And if there's a flush draw out there, and knowing these guys at these microstakes, they're not going to fold to any flush draw, even on the turn. So even if you try to bet out on this turn, I think it's just spew, because you're not really betting for value now. You're betting as bluff to take it down. And if you bet to bluff, you gotta bet close to pot. And knowing these players at microstakes, they're not gonna fold. So let's see what happens here. Hopefully he checks back. Hopefully he checks back. Oh no, he's betting half pot. It was at 85 cents. Oh, and you didn't want to do that. And the river pairs, and let's just kind of follow through what happens. He checks back. And I hope he doesn't bet out again. Don't want to triple bear on that, but it's just a bad bet to bet out. And he had 6-8. So I'm going to look at CFTheNatural's notes on this one. So in this hand, he says, I flat call the button raise in the big big blind with ace queen rolling up under the gun with ace queen 9 king. You're suited to the ace. Good. I flop top and bottom pair and the nut straight draw. I bet for value on the rainbow flop. It's not. I don't think it's a bet for value. I think it's a bet to just take it down. So it's, you could view it as both to bet for value and to bet as a bluff, because there is a mate straight out there with queen jack. If it was heads up, I'll say it's more of betting for value. But against two other players, there's high chance that one of them could have queen jack. Okay, but the small blind calls, and the turn brings a flush draw. Awesome. I bet again to chart draws for value and protection. This is totally incorrect. You're betting as a bluff. You're not charging anyone to draw here. You're betting as a bluff because 6-8 made it and queen jack made it, and a flush draw. And if anyone, say this player, say we didn't know his hand. Say he had a king with 2 hearts in his hand. I think it's going to be crippling your hand here too. Okay, and remember, at these stakes, none of these least passive players are going to fold when they have another flush draw or any kind of flush draw, even on the turn. So the river pairs the board, and he checks. I check back as I don't see any worse hand calling me, and in Parliament of Omaha, like I know in No Limit, you always think about no worse hand calling you, but in Parliament of Omaha, they will. The worst hand will call in Parliament of Omaha, so you can't have that thought process in Parliament of Omaha. Just assume that especially at the 2, 5, and 10 PLO, the worst hands will call you. You can see with these stats like 75. 10, 75, 19, they're not going to fold to anything. So worst calls will call. If he shows a straight, I assume he did not bet the river because he was afraid of the pair board. No, I think he did not bet the river because he was afraid, because he's just a loose passive player. And these guys, remember, even if they have, he had the straight on the turn. It didn't re-raise you. It just proves that they're just loose passive, and if they have the nuts, they're going to just check or call. They're rarely re-raised. I mean, like I said, I've seen guys with who had the quads who didn't re-raise it on the river. So next time when you see these kind of boards where there's made out straight, especially on the turn, you want to check back and give up on this board, especially when you only have 2 pair. And this is a common mistake made by microstake players. No one can fold 2 pairs. And I think maybe this is a good video to make on future video of common mistakes made by microstakes PLO players being unable to fold the 2 pairs, whether it's top 2 pair, middle 2 pair, or top or bottom 2 pairs. So again, it was a mistake. I'll say that was definitely a mistake betting out on that turn. You should have gave up on that turn, and then that 7 completes a straight draw and also a potential flush draw there. And on table number 2, what do we have here? Again, I don't know what happened here, but he had, I guess here on this one, basically the nutted straight, and I think it's called. So 8-5-4-2 is a fold from under the gun. And nice, on table number 2, we have kind of crappy aces, but we have nice side cards here. Definitely a raise for middle. This is awesome. And hopefully he calls and he folds. It's too bad. So every single time he had aces, they folded. And that was definitely a nice ace because the side cards were well connected, although it wasn't a suited ace. 5, 6, ace 6, that's a fold from middle position. Table number one, we have an aggressive play ready. He bet out on the monotone flop. Now he's giving up, and I think player number four probably has the nut flush and not player number six. Okay, and we lost connection, my internet connection, so maybe it's a sign to end this segment of this video. So this is part one for CFTheNatural's session review, and we'll continue with part two on the next video.